Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is One Piece Arabasta Saga Whiskey Peak Arc, Episode 65, Exploding Santoryu, Zoro vs. Baroque Works. Episode in a nutshell is a brief reminder of what happens in the episode. So, the majority of this episode is that Zoro basically fights against Baroque Works while the rest of the crew is asleep. Then Nami wakes up after hearing what Zoro said and decides that since it's a bounty hunter nest, they must have treasure, and decides to try to rob them but fails to. Then at the very end of the episode, two other members of Baroque Works appear, Miss Valentine and Mr. Five, and they've actually come for Igaram and Vivi, and revealed that they were aware of their infiltration into the organization, which Nami happens to overhear. So now that we've been reminded about what happened in the episode, it's time to rank the episode. First on our mostly objective ranking list, followed then by the personal ranking list. So despite the short summary, a lot of points were awarded this episode, starting with our single episode supporting character introduction. This is Karu, and of course, he's in this pretty much this entire saga. However, he is an animal and he is a non-personified animal, meaning that he cannot speak human language, and therefore, being an animal and a pet, he just gets 1 point, which I've established previously with Laboon as well, and with Ryu, that if they are animals and non-personified, even if they're in multiple arcs, they just have 1 point awarded to them. So we do have our super adorable Karu, who is a duck, being introduced. We then have our single arc supporting character growths. We have Miss Monday, and she reveals a new attack, Superhuman Brass Knuckles. And Mr. Nine, who reveals that his weapon of choice is 2 steel bats, and he has 2 attacks with them, the Hot-Blooded Bat of Guts and Home Run Sneaky Bat, which detaches the tip of the bat attached to a chain in order to try to limit the movement of the person he's attacking, in this case Zoro. We then have our multi-arc supporting character introductions, which are Mr. Five, otherwise known as Gem, who has the Bomb Fruit, and Miss Valentine, otherwise known as Makita, who is his partner. We know that Mr. Five has the Bomb Fruit because he does use it on some of the escaping bounty hunters who are running away from Zoro. Then we have the multi-arc supporting character growth, which is Igaram, and he uses his Igarappa, which is his tuba or saxophone, his instrument. The instrument that he uses also has bullets coming out of it, so it's basically like a gun in the form of an instrument. And then he also has his Igarapapa Papa, which is by pulling his necktie, guns hidden in the curls of his hair come out and allow him to, again, utilize his hair as a weapon. Then we have our multi-arc main character development, which is that Vivi's identity as the Princess of Arabasta is exposed. Then we have our multi-arc main character growth, which is Zoro, and he does reveal a new attack, the two-sword style Hawk Wave. And then also Vivi reveals a new attack, which is the Charming Perfume Dance and Peacock Slasher. And that's all of our positive points, which is a massive amount of points. So this is a 10 out of 10 episode. However, at one point, Vivi does decide to take a sleeping and defenseless Luffy hostage in order to try to force Zoro's hand, which is obviously negative messaging or behavior. So 2 points down for that, but again, still 10 out of 10 episode. Which brings our mostly objective ranking to in first, Exploding Santorio Zoro versus Baroque Works, and then in second, A Pirate Loving Town, Arrival at Whiskey Peak. Now my personal ranking, same episode order. This episode, Exploding Santorio Zoro versus Baroque Works, is in first, and A Pirate Loving Town, Arrival at Whiskey Peak is in second. This episode, I did enjoy it a lot. There was some comedy mixed into the fighting. There was obviously the action of the fight. For example, at the end of the last episode, Zoro, to start the fight, kind of speeds away and disappears from view, and everybody's looking around for him at the start of this episode, like, where'd he go? Where'd he disappear to? And then it zooms in on Zoro, who's just standing in the middle of the crowd, pretending to look around for himself. That was a great moment. Um, then there's in the midst of the fight, some of the bounty hunters are trying to reposition. They run through the room where Sanji, Usopp, and Luffy are sleeping and decide to like walk right over Usopp and basically everybody. And Usopp wakes up briefly and goes like, I feel like I've just been stepped on, before falling asleep again. And then his hand ends up near Sanji's face, and Sanji grabs it because in his dream he's dreaming about a mademoiselle. And Luffy just sleeps through the whole thing, but that also was one of the funnier moments. In the midst of their fight, Mr. Nine literally is like fighting against Zoro with his bats, and then Zoro's like, what happened to your acrobatics you were so proud of? And Mr. Nine's like, I'll show you my acrobatics, and then he decided to basically flip right off the roof, defeating himself in a way. And then, of course, we had Karu being introduced, which obviously is an amazing duck. He's a duck among ducks, and we will see that in the future episodes. He's very, very vital to the plot and very brave and wonderful of a duck. But in this episode, Vivi tries to call Karu to her, and he decides to give her his wing instead. And then she finally gets on him, and then she's like, okay, let's run after Zoro. And he decides to sit instead, which is funny. And then when they finally get up there, she's doing her peacock slasher attack, and she has Karu run forward, and then he runs right past Zoro and off of the roof, and they end up falling off too. So it was a very entertaining fight. However, there were some slow times where Zoro was kind of doing the hiding thing. There was the little bit of a break where Nami found out that they're actually broke despite being a nest of bounty hunters. Um, and then briefly there was like, following the people running away so they could introduce Mr. Five and Miss Valentine. Mr. Five and Miss Valentine kind of come in at the end, and then there's the reveal of who Vivi is that occurs. So for all that the fight was really fun, there were a lot of very entertaining moments within it. It also, because he's fighting 100 people and there was a lot of repositioning, there was a lot of time where you were just seeing people moving around and like running around and then flying off of things. And I did think it was kind of, well, at its base level, 100 versus 1 is unfair. That's an unfair fight. However, it is designed to show off how talented and amazing Zoro is and how strong he is, so not necessarily against that. But then to use a hostage, especially someone who's sleeping and can't fight back, I thought that was in poor taste on Vivi's part. And Vivi honestly isn't my favorite character ever. So, like right now she's not bad, but like later on she becomes kind of insufferable to me personally. Like I just am not a fan of hers personally. She's not to my preference personally. But yeah, not a big fan of Vivi. So yeah, I didn't enjoy that. But I did think that the reveal, if you didn't already know who Vivi was, like if it was your first time watching through, would have been pretty surprising and also interesting. So overall, I decided to give it an 8 out of 10 because entertainment value was really high, the reveal was really high, lots of new powers and attacks were shown, but some of the parts were boring and dragged on, and some of the decisions were not necessarily to my preference. So 8 out of 10 was my score. Bringing us now to the saga rankings, where we're ranking each of the arcs against each other. And Reverse Mountain arc tied in first with 90% for both mostly objective and personal ranking. Whiskey Peak on the mostly objective has a score of 19 out of 40, and on the personal ranking has a score of just 12 out of 40. Then we have the series ranking, and East Blue Saga is currently the only completed arc or saga, and therefore is in first, and the Arabasta Saga so far has a 9 out of 70 on, again, both objective and personal rankings. So with that, we have now rewatched and ranked One Piece Arabasta Saga Whiskey Peak Arc, Episode 65, Exploding Centauru, Zara versus Baroque Works. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.